going to continue to worship the Lord, not through song, but through the public reading and study of his word. So let's open our ears and our hearts to hear what God has to say to his people.
The first reading would be from Genesis 12, the first book of Torah. And the Lord said to Abram, "Go forth from your land and from your kin and from your father's house to the land which I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you and make your name great. And so you shall be a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you, and the one who curses you, I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed." So Abram went forth as the Lord had spoken to him, and Lot went with him. Now Abram was 75 years old when he departed from Haran. So Abram took Sarai his wife, and Lot his brother's son, and all their possessions which they had accumulated, and the persons which they had acquired in Haran. And they departed to go forth to the land of Canaan. Thus they came to the land of Canaan, and Abram passed through the land as far as the site of Shechem to the oak of Moreh. Now the Canaanite was then in the land. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, "To your seed I will give this land." So he built an altar there to the Lord, who had appeared to him. When he proceeded from there to the mountain on the east of Bethel, and he pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on, continuing toward the Negev. This is the word of the Lord.
The gospel portion for tonight is from the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 9, starting at verse 9. Please stand. It's a tradition to honor the gospel, the words of Jesus. We are in the presence of a king. Brothers and sisters, the good news according to Matthew. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," he told him. And Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. For I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." While he was saying this, a synagogue leader came and knelt before him and said, "My daughter has just died, but come, put your hand on her, and she will live." Jesus got up and went with him, and so did his disciples. Just then, a woman who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his cloak. She said to herself, "If only I could touch his cloak, I will be healed." Jesus turned and saw her. "Take heart, daughter," he said. "Your faith has healed you." And the woman was healed at that moment. When Jesus entered the synagogue leader's house and saw the noisy crowd and people playing pipes, he said, "Go away, the girl is not dead, but asleep." They laughed at him. After the crowd had been put outside, he went in and he took the girl by the hand, and she got up. News of this spread throughout all that region. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Please be seated. For those that might not be familiar with the church calendar, we're in a new season. We're in what's called the second Sunday after Pentecost. We're in a season called Ordinary Time. But why is it called Ordinary Time? Not because we couldn't figure out a name for our season, or that it's actually ordinary. It's actually the longest season in the entire church calendar. And the color, to reflect the seasonal changes, just like in nature, changes from red and white, which we've been wearing, to green. And the word green, until I think Messiah returns just about. But ordinary is named after the word ordinal, which means numbers, because no one can figure out what to call these Sundays anymore. Right? We've had Trinity Sunday, which was a day where we discussed the Trinity. We had just had Corpus Christi, which was a discussion on Jesus's challenge in John chapter 6 to feed on him, the body of Christ. And now every Sunday after Pentecost is just the second Sunday after Pentecost, the third Sunday after Pentecost, the fourth Sunday after Pentecost, because no one can figure out anything else to call them. So that's our ordinary time. And because we're in lectionary reading A, we will be studying the words of Jesus and the good news through Matthew. So that's our portion for us tonight. And you can see in the stories that we've been given, they're powerful stories about people who have faith. They're very faithful. Yes, there are some elements of a call. There's a call of Abraham. There's a call of Matthew. Even Jesus is called. But there are a few characters who are not, but they demonstrate faith and faithfulness. And so the challenge for us tonight is to be faithful in the calling that we have. So what is faith, I hear you ask? Well, it might surprise some of us that the word faith doesn't appear in a couple of books in the Bible, which of course we should kick them out then, right? So that's John out. The Gospel of John doesn't use the word faith. Neither does the book of Genesis. And yet it's got some characters in there. Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Strong characters. But the word faith is not attached to them. Something else is. Belief. Ma'amin, to believe. And laha'amin, to believe, is also the verb for to trust. Belief isn't something that you think or some secret knowledge that you know. It's got something to do with it. But the nuance of trust has to be there, because as we know, even demons believe. When they met Jesus, they could say, "We know who you are. You're the Holy One of Israel." Did they do anything about it? No, apart from run into a bunch of pigs. But they didn't trust in the Lord. But that's what Abraham does. He believes God. He trusts in the promises and call of God. And that gives him the courage to walk out faithfully his calling. And we're going to see the same characteristics in the woman, in Matthew, in Jesus, and in the synagogue ruler. Because this, for Abraham, this trusting in the Lord is going to have an incredible impact on everybody, on the entire world. All the earth is going to be blessed because you trusted in my voice. And according to the text, it says Abraham believed God, and it was accredited to him as righteousness. Now, if you're a good little Protestant like me, whenever you hear the word righteous, you think of Romans. No one is righteous, no, not one. Does anyone think like that? Which would make our psalm completely superfluous. Sing to the Lord, all you righteous. But seeing as how none of yous are, it's going to be a very quiet song, isn't it? The Lord stands in the congregation of the righteous, which means he's all there alone by himself. Perhaps we need to have a bit more of a nuance as to what this word righteous actually means. In Hebrew, it comes from the word tzedakah, which does mean righteousness, and it can also mean charity or almsgiving. It's got a lot of different uses, but my favorite, and I think applies especially to Abraham and to the call you and I have, is in Micah chapter 6, verse 5, where God in Micah is talking through the prophet to Israel, and he is saying, Israel, what have I done to really annoy you? I mean, I took you out of Egypt when you were thirsty. I gave you water. I gave you manna. Your clothes didn't wear out. I guided you through the wilderness. I spoke to you. I fought your battles. You saw my righteousness. Most translations will say, you saw my acts of righteousness. The Hebrew is, we saw his tzedakot in plural. Now, the RSV, the Revised Standard Version, has a unique take on it. It says, Israel, you saw my saving activity. Why would they translate that like that? Because one of the deep meanings of the biblical Hebrew word for tzedakah means the redemptive saving activity of the Lord. Because that's what they saw. They saw God saving them. They participated in his redemptive activity. Now, Abraham believed God. He trusted in him to have the courage to walk out his call. And that activity, he joined in the redemptive saving plan of the Lord. Imagine if he hadn't. Imagine if he had said, nope, think I'll stay here. We don't have Isaac. There's no sacrifice on the mountain. There's no son being offered by a father. There's no foreshadow or part. Where's the redemptive plan? But he does answer the call. And in that courage, he becomes part of the redemptive plan. So we see in our Genesis 12, when Abraham takes the stage, he's got absolutely no history. We don't have his lineage. We don't know what family grouping he's from. We don't know where he is or why he actually can hear from the Lord. But the text doesn't say, and the Lord spoke to Abram, and Abram went, oh no, I'm going insane. I'd better get some friends together and take some pills. And have some, I'm hearing voices, guys. Somehow, Abraham, can talk to the Lord. How does that happen? We know very little of his early childhood. I guess there's one thing we do know. He really likes to build altars. Okay? Everywhere he goes, building an altar. Maybe he didn't get to be an altar boy as a kid, and he's just making up for lost time. Okay? Wherever the Lord does, I'm building an altar. So, in the book of Daniel, you get this really nasty king called Nebuchadnezzar, and he has a dream that scares the absolute pants off him. And he grabs some people to try and interpret his dream. And he grabs 4 types of people. He grabs his magicians, he grabs his necromancers, and he grabs his visionaries, soothsayers, people who see dreams, and Chaldeans. 3 of them are jobs. 1 of them is a people group. How is it that a race of people are brought in with people like magicians and necromancers. So there is a tradition, it's just a tradition, that the people of the Chaldeans had a way of talking to God. So they could communicate in some way. And we discover, started in Chaldea with the call to come out to Israel, the land of Canaan. And when things don't work out, unfortunately, then in the book of Daniel, the temple gets destroyed and the people of Israel are taken to where? Babylon. And it says in Daniel chapter 1, they had to relearn the language of the Chaldeans. Why? Because God's saying, you guys forgot how to talk to me. Now go back, you relearn this language, and we'll do Israel 2.0. Okay? Once you've had some time, you're coming back. Beginnings and endings often working out this way. Perhaps that's why Abraham can hear from the Lord. And go, lech lecha, go from your country, go from your people, go from your father's house. Why? Why can't I just bring monotheism where I am right now? Why is the land of Israel so important? Get to that in a minute. So, is Abraham the only Chaldean running around hearing from the Lord? Well, there seems to be a parallel story that's well known, because in Genesis 11, just before, who actually leaves Chaldea first? Terah. How? Maybe he heard from the Lord. Don't know. In Acts chapter 7, Stephen, in his defense against the Sanhedrin, he uses this story. In Acts chapter 7, he says, Abraham, while he was in Mesopotamia, so he's kind of thinking Abraham's actually in Chaldea still, he was told to leave his father's house. But it's in the context, the whole chapter 7 is in the context of people being disobedient. So Abraham is told to leave his father's house. Did he? Waited until dad died. And took his nephew Lot. That's not in the instructions. Maybe he was hedging his bets. I don't have any children, maybe I can pass my stuff on to Lot. Unfortunately, while we're traveling, those guys get into some arguments. And then they go their separate ways. And then I'm going to give Eliezer the opportunity to inherit. And so when God is going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, guess who's in that town? Lot. Guess who Abraham doesn't mention is in that town? Lot. Hey, what about 10 people? Could have just said, hey, my nephew's in there, don't blow it up. So maybe there are some issues. But what we see is Abraham got a call. It was a bit of a stumble at the start. But boy, did he finish well. He got that courage. He answered that call. And he put his belief and his trust into action. Faith is something you do. It is not just something you believe. It is not a doctrine. It is not being able to quote the entire Athanasian Creed on Trinity Sunday. Okay? I don't even think Athanasius could do that anymore. It's something else. You put your faith into action. Let's have a look at our other hero from Matthew, which is Matthew. So Jesus comes and he doesn't ask Matthew, hey, Matthew, would you like to follow me? He's told, follow me. Who is Matthew? Well, again, not a lot of background information, but we know this. He's on the bad side. He's a traitor. He's one of the fifth column. He's a Jewish guy working for the occupying Romans. He's taking their money, Jewish money, which in the ancient world was probably 50% tax. Who wants to get taxed 50%? Anybody? And they would give it to idol worshippers. And this guy is a traitor. And Jesus calls him. Now, we look at the people Jesus calls, and there's just a string of very crazy people. We've got some fishermen. We've got religious nuts. We've got traitors. Would you call any of these people? Or would you like hang out in the Bible colleges and wait to get some real disciples? And what is discipleship? Discipleship is not, we've said it before at these pulpits, it's not everybody comes and has a 2-hour Bible study on Wednesday and then comes to church on Sunday and that's it. And then you go home and get a job. When you become a disciple, you follow your rabbi 24/7. And so you watch what he does when he wakes up in the morning. You see what he has for breakfast because you cooked it for him. Okay, so when he wakes up, does he pray? Does he say 3 Hail Marys, which for Jesus would be like, hey, mum. And then you do it too. You eat what he eats, you dress like him, you walk like him, you talk like him, you preach like him, you pray like him, you look like him. So at the end of your discipleship time, how many Jesuses do we have? 12. That's our calling. We bear this guy's name. We call ourselves Christian, little Messiah, Meshichim. We are like Messiah. That's what we've got to be like. It's an incredible call. And there's Matthew. He didn't start so well either. He was batting for the wrong side. He was a traitor. He gets called. He answers that call. Courage. Trust. What did he know about Jesus at this stage? Jesus hasn't risen from the dead. Okay? But he follows the Lord. Come and eat with me. So there's Jesus with his disciples eating in a tax collector's house. You can imagine what the disciples were thinking. Like as they're looking at Matthew. Hi, traitor. Very sorry I've spilt my wine on your nice dress. Sinners come. Who are the sinners? They're the unwashed people. Am haaretz. These are the ones who don't bother going to the mikveh. They don't go to synagogue very often. The religious people would say, they're a lost cause. Don't eat with them. But there's Jesus and his disciples. His disciples are really learning something here. The Pharisees, who, by the way, Jesus eats with as well. Jesus eats with Pharisees and tax collectors and sinners. He's eating with everybody. Because Jesus is sent to who? The God so loved the world. All of it. Not just part of it. All of it. And the Pharisees come and they say, hey, disciples, why is your master eating with those unwashed people? And you know what the disciples say? Nothing. Probably because they don't know either. They're going, yeah, why are we eating with these people? But they're learning something. And Jesus says, I'll teach you. Okay, it's not the healthy that need a doctor. It's the sick. And he quotes from Hosea, mercy over sacrifice. Does that mean that sacrifices aren't important? That's not true. Sacrifices have their place. But we know from the book of Leviticus, best book in the Bible, that sacrifices are for unintentional sin. I can't go and steal Yochanan's car and then go, oh, probably shouldn't have done that. I think I'll go kill a goat so that me and Jesus are okay. What should I do? Give the car back and 20%. And say sorry, and whatever I can to make up a relationship. Then I better talk to Jesus and go, I need to get right with you too, because I'm doing something. The sacrifices, I didn't help. And when you read in the book of Numbers, you actually see a few times where the people say, we've done wrong, please forgive us, and there's no sacrifice. And many of the sacrifices, especially if you were poor, you couldn't afford an animal. So what could you bring? And in Leviticus, it says you can bring grain. You can make a muffin. And you can come to the Lord, and a little bit goes for God, a little bit goes for the priest, and the rest you eat. You eat your own sacrifice, right? And a very Jewish thing to do. And even if you don't have that, in Hosea chapter 14, verse 2, the prophet says, repent, return to me, and bring words. If that's all you've got, come and bring that, because I've always wanted your heart. It's always been about the heart. Write these laws on your heart, says the Lord. Take out my heart of stone and put in a heart of flesh. Circumcise your heart, which would have been nice for Abraham at 90 years of age to hear that one. But what else? When we say the Shema, love the Lord your God with all your heart. Okay? Not love the Lord with all your good doctrine, although important, really important. It's always been about the heart too. So Matthew follows, and it changes his life, and he changes our life, because we're reading his words for the next year. Okay? And then we get the story where Jesus gets a call. He's already had a call. He's answered the call from his Father. That's why he's here on the planet. And then a synagogue ruler comes and says, I'm calling you. My daughter has died, and I really need your help. Come and touch her. That's all you need to do. And while he's doing that, then somebody else needed a touch. We get an unnamed woman whom the other Gospels give a little bit more information about. She's been struggling with this issue for a long time. And in that world, it makes her an outcast and unclean. She can't be with her people, probably even her family. She's desperate. And she knows that Jesus can heal. Does she believe that Jesus is the Son of God, he's part of the Trinity? Does she know any of that? Probably not. What she has is trust. If I just touch his clothing, not even him, I'll get healed. And she works through that crowd. She puts her little finger and she touches, and she is healed. And Jesus knows, he knows that power has left him. He goes and he says, daughter, that's actually a Hebrewism, that she's part of the tribe. Okay? She's not an outcast. And he says, your faith made you well. Faith in what? Her faithfulness, her persistence, her trust, her belief that all I have to do, and I'm not going to give up until I'm healed. That's sometimes some of the prayer for some of us. Some of us have children that we would beg the Lord to come and touch and heal. So Jesus has answered the call to be here, and he's answered the call of the synagogue ruler. And he arrives at the house. There's all the people doing their mourning and screaming and wailing. And he says, out you go. And he touches. Did he need to do that? He could have just said, get up. He said it before. He stood out the front of Lazarus' tomb and said, Lazarus, come out. Didn't touch him. But here, very intimate. Sometimes some of us need that touch from the Lord. So we've got a lot of stories of people hearing a call and putting their faith into action and trusting in the Lord unconditionally. And so that's the call for us. That's our invitation as we wrestle with this. You've all answered the call to come and worship the Lord. But you've also got the call to share the light to the world. You're invited to become part of the redemptive saving activity of God. Seek first the kingdom. Seek first his redemptive saving activity, his kingship and his righteousness. Join in the program. We might not start out the gate so well. We might stumble a bit. Some of us might even be hurting. Some of us might have even started on the wrong side. But all of us can take that call. All of us can walk out our faith with fear and trembling. All of us can trust the Lord, put our belief into trust and have the confidence to step forward, especially when we leave tonight and start that call. And so if you're not ready for that call, if you need some help, then you come and you see us tonight. We'll have some people praying off to the side. They can anoint you with oil if you so desire. But they'll pray with you to take the call. That call is for all of us. This world needs us to answer the call. It needs us to walk out our faith with fear and trembling. We don't do it alone. There's an army of saints that have gone before us. There's a bunch of friends and family that are right here in this room, and there's more outside. And when we stumble and when we fall, by the grace and mercy of God, let's pick ourselves up with each other. Encourage, bless, and keep going. There's healing in his wings, and it's beautiful. Shalom.